We are going to be taking a deep dive into the Bitcoin chart today. We can see right now the markets are in absolute free fall. Massive, massive trillion-dollar moves to the downside. I can only imagine the fear that is in the greater markets right now. People all over the world just super fearful, scared. A lot of people are losing a lot of money on their long-term investments. When you look at the stock market, it's getting destroyed. Some of the biggest moves down that we have seen in years. This comes off the back of the Trump tariffs. So the market's not liking it, it's safe to say. In this video, I want to bring some clarity, some calmness to you and your analysis going forwards, because that's what you need when it comes to taking trades. You cannot have this irrational thought process, that fear, those real strong emotions. You really need to, brush them to the side, focus on the technical analysis and the charts, because, there is a lot of fear. There is a lot of, high speculation of massive crashes to come. I am personally positioned for downside. I have no longs open at all, no longs. And I have lots of shorts open. So in that regards, great. If a crash comes, perfect. I would profit off of it, right? But with that said, it doesn't mean I'm going to go all out and forget about any long trade setups. We have a very nice long trade lining up. We need to wait for some confirmation. We'd love to see the order flow at that level. It's not quite hit yet. But we do have a long trade very close by on Bitcoin that's coming into fruition. So I want to talk you through that and how, of course, if we are this ultra scared, fearful mentality, that herd mentality right now, we would totally forget about the long, miss it, and, probably even end up taking some shorts at support, which is what we want to avoid, right? So back to the video, focused on the analysis, non-emotional viewpoint on the market, and I will give you a unbiased view. Okay, I will approach it as a very neutral perspective and just looking for the highest probability best trades. I'm aware that the volume might be slightly low of this video, having a bit of a problem with the mic, so you want to crank it up as much as you can on your speakers. It's going to be a good one. Let's go into the analysis. So, of course, Bitcoin actually holding up really well when you take it in a direct comparison to the stock market. And here we're just going to be looking at the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 futures. But they're actually, getting absolutely wrecked, to be honest. They had their rallies, middle or late last month where they NQ and ES both hit into these really strong. So this is the all-time high of the ES, right? All-time high, anchored VWAP. You can see how it holds really nicely as support. Holds really nicely as resistance here. Here, ultimately ending as resistance. Another test into resistance. NQ was even nicer, okay, in that regards, with the most perfect back test, which was on the bigger range value area high. So a bigger range where we had that clear support down here at 17,500. When you see this from that major lower high pivot, that anchored VWAP, just look at that, how perfect. If you take it from the absolute high, you can just see the perfection there of how and where the NQ rejected from. I really thought that was powerful. On a pretty simple, look at this, support flipping into resistance zone on the very important downtrend anchored VWAP. So this anchored VWAP on, of course, the bigger range value area high. So that's just wonderful confluence to put in that major pivot there on the 26th of March for further downside. ES at the same time putting in that pivot on the 26th of March. You can see Bitcoin from the 26th of March had a retest just 2 days ago. So that was as Trump was speaking on the tariffs. You call that the last fake out. But in a direct comparison, it's safe to say Bitcoin is holding up very well when you directly compare it against these stocks, which are in free fall crashing right now. So, one of two takeaways here. One is that, Bitcoin is delaying the inevitable, which is a larger crash. We're going to be dropping to below $77,000. These lows will be taken out, and it's just delaying here. It's holding up, but the drop will come. Or, the alternative is building up to support here. And, that plays into the long trade that we actually have lining up, which I want to share with you here. So I want to just hide everything for you a second and bring this back to the basics. So, of course, we had the all-time high up at around $110,000. And a few things to bear in mind while we were still trading around this zone at the end of January. At this point, the market was still in full FOMO. It's crazy, right? the transition that it takes from January to the end of March. That's a full 180 here. It was full FOMO bullishness, everybody celebrating, to here, a few months later, a stark comparison, the difference, sorry, in the sentiment of the market across, across the stocks and crypto. People right now are, really feeling the pain. But when you compare this back to January, what was going on right now? We saw some of the biggest FOMO that we've ever seen, right? So across the board, when we were, of course, I think it's fairly obvious, but when you're at all-time highs here in January, the market is in full FOMO. Everybody's celebrating everything. Everybody's looking for massive increases in prices, right? You got the altcoin season starting. You got the Bitcoin to $1 million. All these types of posts are getting talked about. I still have my short from $106,000, which was a really simple fake out of the all-time high. So this was our all-time high at the end of December. It's a similar story to what I've seen many times in the market. We really simply look at that swing failure pattern all-time high. After I saw that swing failure pattern, we had a lower 5-minute term time frame range that got back tested, and that was my short entry at $106,000. This is very similar if you actually compare it back to 2021, 2020. At start of 2022, right? What was this all-time high putting up? Look at this, really simple fake outs, right? So these fake outs, not 100% the same, but very similar in that regard, where you put in an all-time high, you get a pullback, you get that final fake out, and then a much bigger drop to the downside. Here, high, fake out, much bigger drop to the downside. This is something that you see very often. Here on a more bullish scenario, but just so you can see again how Bitcoin does these types of moves often. This is in the midst of the bull market starting, but you have a high. Well, this is obviously not an all-time high, but a very similar bit of price action where you fake out that high before getting a bigger drop down to taking out major lows. So just to bear in mind, right, Bitcoin has these patterns, and it's at these points where people have that full FOMO and euphoria, and that's how you draw. I've shared with you all this before, right? But that's how we put onto this distribution pattern. I've been showing you now, this lovely distribution that we had, since back at $96,000. For me, this was the highest probability, and we've really simply since here just put in a series of lower highs and back tests. So the distribution pattern, playing out, I want to say, pretty perfectly there. But yeah, what was a few other key moments? Okay, of course, Trumpcoin getting listed at around the 22nd of January, reaching its all-time high. So I have my short, of course, from $69 on Trumpcoin. But I've referred you back to this post that was Bitcoin while it was trading at around $93,000. The sentiment even at this point was full on FOMO. Everybody, Trump wants everyone to win, free money long. I think this was after the Bitcoin reserve was announced. People just getting super, super, super bullish. Bitcoin reserve, America's going to implement Bitcoin. They're going to buy Bitcoin. Trump wants everyone to win and make money. What were we doing at the time? Forming the biggest divergences that I've seen in a very, very, very long time. And just goes to show you that you have to really know how to position yourself in these markets and not get carried away with the the narrative at the time, which was just extreme bullishness on the Bitcoin reserve, right? Same with Trumpcoin. Taking those shorts at $69 if we trading at $8. It's crazy. But what I really want to refer you to here is presidents releasing meme coins, shilling meme coins. Donald Trump actually tweeting out Trump coin is the best coin I've ever seen, words to those effects. And here you see Eric Trump saying buy the dip. He actually went on to edit this post because at the time, he's tweeted out even saying buy Ethereum, thank me later. Ethereum has dropped 30% since then. So it's just like, I've been warning. I really have been trying to help you watching these videos. I've made several videos about my bearish bias, alerting you of the dangers and the bad practices. I really just want to help. 99% of people in this space just want to shill you their bags, profit on your losses. And that goes from the influencers that you see on crypto Twitter and YouTube, 99%, and a lot of scammers in this space. They just want to show you, a load of rubbish. Up to presidents wanting to dump on you. So it's a pretty hard space to be in. Let's be honest, it's not great. But so I want to warn you all and wake you all up before it really is too late. Being very open that my bearish bias on the altcoins is very strong. here I was, asked to pick the position, much more bearish. Said this many times on all of crypto. I'm simply much more bearish when it comes to Bitcoin, when it comes to the altcoins. And time after time, we're just getting short and chill weekends. This was at the end of March, reminding you all that everything's just looking really bad right now. Markets are weak, no longs. I believe lever comes short and chill. And, we've dropped on the bigger markets another 10% since then, right? So Bitcoin. So, just to get that out of the way, the doom and gloom a little bit, I must admit I'm extremely bearish on the altcoins. I think they look absolutely, terrible. I think Ethereum still looks looks really bad. I'm personally expecting full-blown reversals on coins such as XRP. I know the hype around the XRPs, but I'm looking for the full reversals on these coins. I think the weakness on Ethereum is still strong. I think the greater markets are in for a downturn, but let's try and bring you some light, some positivity of where I could be wrong on that bias, right? So let's bring it back over to this chart. First thing that I want to bring your attention to is the major lower highs that we put in at the end of March. And where was this stemming from? Really simply, you take a Fibonacci from that major rally here. So we put in a low of $77,000 up to a rally high of $95,000. So very significant rally. Remember, this was our half point of the CME gap fill. From that half point of the CME gap fill, which I did long, by the way. Did have a long from this. Of course, I'm out of it now. But from that major pivot high down to the low, we rejected from the CC Fibonacci to the dollar. Again, a lot of people will say, oh, Daniel, why don't you use the golden pocket? Why put in the time and the effort and the research to find the CC? And this is why. You get that dollar accuracy that you don't get with a golden pocket. So, yeah, dollar high off of the CC. What does this bring my attention to? It brings my attention to what is known as a Gartley harmonic, first and foremost. So I bring my XA pivot. I bring it up to the B pivot. In my opinion, this is still a lower high, so searching for the C. The C absolutely could not be in right now, and this is where you get that bullish case for a long, up to a target in around $90,000. You're going to be, you see here, the pivot B was put in at the high of the CC. So we can take this Fibonacci again from the low of A pivot up to the top of B pivot of the harmonic, and we'll be looking for the low of the CC, much as we put in the high of the CC of point pivot B. So you can see that lining up at around 80, oh, look at that, big devil number there, $80,666.6 dollars. So I would refer to this as a bit of a zone, give it a little bit of leeway, and I'm really giving that down to around $79,500. You can see that you do have a higher term time frame daily at 78,500. This is technically still valid because this can come down to the 886. Ideally, though, it doesn't drop to the 886. We hold around the 786 to the low of the CC. But of course, it's fair game down to the daily. It's not technically invalidated at this point. Okay, losing the daily invalidates the bullishness of the point C of the pivot. Of course, this is overall a bearish harmonic, so I wouldn't get too excited of longing point C, because at the end of the day, you rally up to 90,000 for a much bigger short trade opportunity. This is a bearish harmonic, but nevertheless, a lot of fear, a lot of scaredness, and you are in a support zone. Again, is the inevitable coming and a much bigger drop? Well, one would say it's very likely, but nevertheless, we could still have an absolutely valid long trade setup lining up in this zone. So let's not get too ahead of ourselves. I would always advocate, you don't want to get bearish at support. Unfortunately, if you have missed these several short opportunities that you've had, then that's just part of the game. Not a great position to be in. It's just unfortunate, right? I would not be looking for shorts here at $80,000, even though I do believe we can drop to, $75,000. There's a big difference in shorting at $80,000, which is a support zone, versus, the biggest opportunities that you've had with the retests of 94,000 and 98,000. These were your last major short opportunities. Since then, again, you've had some minor opportunities, of course, at 88,000. This was a harder one, but on the Trump talks of the rally, of the tariffs, you had that last opportunity. I did not take this myself, but I've already had several shorts that I'm in, so I wasn't really too aggressive. But anyway, there's a big difference shorting these rallies versus shorting support Again, this support can be lost and flipped to resistance, but right now, it is classed as support. And there's a big difference shorting at $80,000 versus shorting at $98,000, right? So, this is why when you have these massive FOMO opportunities, when you see, the divergence is forming, you got to react, and you got to be taking your shorts here on the rallies during the FOMO. It's not ideal to be shorting the lows when there's a lot of fear. Again, can we drop lower? Absolutely yes, but for me, that's not a short I am willing to take. Down here, I'm actually looking for a potential long opportunity. Again, I'm not holding my breath because, as I've mentioned, I am much more bearish, but I'll absolutely happily take a long trade here if the, if those lower term time frame order flow lines up and I get a nice bullish reaction here. Okay, I'd happily lock in that long. And again, that stems from around the low of the CC there. Down to the lowest point that is valid is around just below that daily, okay, the 886, which officially comes in around 77.7k, right? So yeah, that's the harmonic that I'm looking at. I'm aware of the massive amount of fear. I personally would be very sad if I didn't have a short trade right now on Bitcoin, but this is why you got to take advantage of those rises, understand, the market conditions. And I think having a general idea of what Trump's trying to do, again, this is speculation even for myself, but it really seems like he's trying to bring down the market, probably wants to, have some effect on Fed decision, interest rates, refinancing, debt. Maybe in the greater term, it all works out, but short term, there's a lot of uncertainty and fear, and it's driving down the market. But when you understand the greater plan, maybe it's not the end of the world as some might want you to think. And also, the times when you should be bearish versus when you're bullish. The times where you got the presidents calling buy the dip, massive FOMOs. This is the time when you want to be looking for your shorts. Would I look for shorts down here? No, even though we could absolutely do something like this and head straight down. I just, again, would always talk about, a primed entry. You're not primed entry shorts. Your primed entries are on the rallies. So that's why, your final opportunity, if you're given, would be a rally up to around $90,000 to $92,000. This is your last prime opportunity. Down here at $80,000, even though it could drop lower, for me is not something I'm ever going to be interested in. So, I really wanted to bring you this video, maybe for just that bit of calmness that I can give. A lot of people I just know are super scared, super fearful. And is it right to be a little bit cautious here? Absolutely, yes. It is a time to be cautious. The biggest way to lose money here is by taking bad trades. That's why, I'm not going to take a long unless it lines up perfectly. And I put myself in a position where if it absolutely pumps from here before taking the lows, I very likely would miss the long setup. Okay. And I'm comfortable in that. I'm very comfortable in missing a trade when I don't have that high probability entry trigger. I pride myself on my patience, on finding those good setups and sticking to my guns and waiting for that setup to hit. And that puts me in a position where sometimes I will miss trades through my level of patience of waiting for the best. Of course, the market is a game of probabilities. I wait for the best. Sometimes it can pump on average setups. I understand that. And it's where I put myself in a position of protection of capital is greater than, the risk of losing money on bad trades. For me, I'd prefer to protect my capital, wait for the best. And if I miss out on something, well, there's another day of trading tomorrow. I can get in on some retraces. I'm just not going to have sniped the absolute low, which in a long-term trading, what we're all about here, Chart Champions, is all about long-term consistency, right? We're not here to pump and dump altcoins, pump and dump our bags, shill you, anything, right? We're here for that professional level of analysis. Come in, analyze the market, take your profits, get out, look for the next trade setup. If Bitcoin is to pump here without me, it's not going to pump up forever. There will be a retrace. I will get in on signs of strength, and that applies to all altcoins too. This for me is a sensible way of trading when you're after long-term consistency and profitability. Okay, I think you all know by now, if you want the moon boys, if you want the, that type of analysis, then you look elsewhere. But by now, I hope you can see after the years, what I give you is just some real honest opinions, transparency with my analysis, and really what I'm looking for next. And so, yeah, I hope this has been helpful. I hope my thoughts, very bearish, these opinions that I've been giving you over the past 3 months now, to be fair, have aided you. And, again, I end with the last words here, that it's not all doom and gloom. It's not all definitely going to drop from here. Again, the signs of distribution are there, but this can even be invalidated. What do we want? We want that sign of strength. So we need to start to change market structure. Okay, we need to start to get acceptance into previous range value area lows. If you can do such signs of strength, then, this can, just like it was full bullish and euphoria a few months ago, it's now full depression. We start to get that sign of strength and reclaims. Well, the market will flip and it will start to become euphoric once again. So, the market's always moving in these ebb and flows. And the best way to position yourself is, of course, getting in moves such as a potential long here off the harmonic. And that's where if it comes up to the last point D, and we actually, instead of getting the rejection there, end in strength, well, we have a major long running into profits. Alternatively, it gets invalidated. We head down lower. Well, long never gets activated or stopped, and our several shorts from higher continue to run. That's the way that I am looking at this market now. We are not forming any bullish divergences here. We still actually have some long trades opening on the order flow. So, I would argue this is jumping the gun when you just look at the stacked resistance we have above us. But yeah, we got New York Open coming up soon, so this will be a big telltale sign. We'll see how the market opens today. I would be very much focused on the NQ, which has just hit the daily here. You can actually see. So NQ, hitting the daily support. So let's see how this market reacts into going into New York Open. This is a very minor support level for me, by the way, but hey, you can just see the importance of the levels, the respect that they get. Look at that 1 minute chart. Biggest market in the world, S&P. Oh, no, this is the NASDAQ, but still a multi-trillion-dollar market, right? Hitting the daily there, and look at the reaction. So the levels that chart champions have done here, respected across the board. Doesn't matter what you're trading, the analysis is there and it's respected. So yeah, minor reaction from, honestly a minor level, but what I'm looking at next would be that harmonic, which if invalidated, yeah, let's search down for new lows. Well, of course, we do have still some very nice levels down below us. So it's not the end of the world if we come down and search for those, right? So yeah, I hope this has been helpful to you. If it has, I would love if you could leave a comment down below, maybe like the video, share the video with some friends and family. And, that would be very helpful to, grow the channel. And why do we want to grow the channel? Well, the more people that we can connect with, the more people that we can help. The majority of the world, they are blinded. They are, really in that viewpoint of, Donald Trump, everybody just wants us to get free money. Let's buy the dips. You want to get out of that. I don't know the right word, so I apologize in advance if this is slightly offensive, but out of that kind of sheep mindset where it's like the government wants us to win. The people literally, I quote, were saying Trump wants us to win and everybody wants to make free money here. They're adding the Bitcoin reserve, long. You really want to wake up from that mentality. The herd continuously loses. The market, have a guess, 95% of people lose. So, I truly feel sorry for the people that listen to such, or really believe in such, Trump wants us to make all money. And again, this is not political, but I'm just talking from facts. When you look at things such as Trumpcoin, when you look at the disastrous, results that people would have had listening to such euphoria at $69, yeah. It's in the charts, and I talk from the charts, not from any sort of political stance, so very neutral on that. So yeah, when it comes to this, I hope that I can wake you up a little bit. I hope that I can, offer you some assistance. And with that, I want to sign it up. Otherwise, I'll ramble on for another 20 minutes here. Hope you've enjoyed. If you want to see more from me or the team, we do live trading sessions, so you get to see our thought process live in the time again. Not having so much time for the YouTube videos lately, but You know, yesterday we had, well, I done 2 live streams on the website. We had I done a live trading stream on Wednesday. Of course, Eagle done a live trading stream as well yesterday. He has another one today. So we have daily live stream videos, whole educational course, everything that you need to build a community, to connect, to make some friends, and of course, learn about trading. If that's of interest, chartchampions.com, one-stop shop for truly everything that you need to do with this. We're on your side. We want you to win. Hope you've enjoyed. And if you want more, well, you know where to get it. Cheers, everybody. Thank you. That's me signing out now. Thank you, and goodbye. Cheers.